Imagine standing in the middle of the world's oldest desert, only to find yourself surrounded by Bavarian timber-framed houses and the smell of fresh apple strudel. This isn't just architectural nostalgia. This is the frozen, blood-stained footprint of an empire that tried to rebuild itself thousands of miles away from home, and succeeded in ways you wouldn't expect. But behind this picturesque European postcard lies a dark secret. This town was built upon the ruins of the 20th century's first forgotten genocide. In certain Namibian towns today, German isn't just a tourist language, it's a primary mode of survival, a linguistic anomaly known as Kücheldeutsch that shouldn't exist in 2024. Why is Germany currently paying billions in reparations to a country it hasn't ruled in a century? And why are some locals fighting to keep the German identity alive? The Atlantic coast holds the first physical evidence of this displacement. Here, where the Namib Desert's towering red dunes collide with the freezing ocean, lies the town of Swakopmund. Step onto the pavement, and the blistering African sun beats down on the pastel-colored, timber-framed walls of the Vormann House, erected in 1887. Nearby, a neo-Gothic Lutheran church spire pierces a dry, cloudless sky. The air smells of salt and desert dust, yet the metal street signs read Kaiser Wilhelmstrasse and Bismarckstrasse, embossed in historic German script. This is no modern replica. The heavy oak doors and the steep roofs designed to shed European snow that never falls here represent a rigid, geometric grid of Prussian order stamped directly onto the shifting sands. This architectural anomaly feels entirely out of place. A misplaced fragment of Germany's 19th century empire preserved in the heat, carrying a silent weight that suggests these stones were laid for a purpose far deeper than mere nostalgia. How did a Baltic port city's blueprint end up stamped onto the lethal edge of the Namib? The paper trail begins not in Africa, but in a winter-chilled conference room in Berlin. Between 1884 and 1885, European diplomats gathered around a massive map, dividing a continent they had never seen without a single African present. Among them was Adolf Luderitz, a speculative merchant from Bremen. In 1883, Luderitz had already executed a quiet deception at Angra Pequena, trading 200 rifles and 80 pounds sterling to Nama chief Jonas Sick for 50,000 square kilometers of coastline. This private, asymmetric swap, signed under duress, became the legal wedge. Backed by Chancellor Bismarck, Luderitz's commercial claim transformed overnight. By the time the ink dried in Berlin, this desolate strip of desert was declared a German protectorate. Imperial paperwork converted private speculation into state-sanctioned territory, laying the cold, legal groundwork for the Prussian streets that would soon rise from the sand. The bureaucratic order forged in Berlin soon manifested as systematic violence on the ground. In January 1904, the Herero people rose against the confiscation of their grazing lands, followed by the Nama in 1905. The imperial response was absolute. General Lothar von Trotha arrived with a directive that bypassed negotiation entirely. On October 2, 1904, Trotha issued his Vernichtungsbefehl, the extermination order. It declared that any Herero found within the German borders, armed or unarmed, would be shot. The military did more than wage war, they engineered the environment as a weapon. Soldiers drove fleeing families deep into the Omaheke Desert, a waterless expanse of the Kalahari, and sealed the perimeters. Water holes were systematically poisoned or guarded. Those who survived the arid wastes were swept into a newly devised network of concentration camps. In the freezing, wind-swept harbor of Luderitz, the colonial administration established Shark Island. Here, prisoners were subjected to relentless forced labor, constructing the concrete jetties and stone buildings that still define the coastline. Camp registers record the names of detainees like Johannes Kahenda and Miriam Kaharo. Units of labor worked to the point of exhaustion under coastal gales. Insufficient rations, extreme exposure, and disease turned the peninsula into a terminal destination. By the time the camps closed in 1908, this campaign had claimed 80% of the Herero population and half of the Nama nation. Underneath the tidy, pastel-colored facades of these desert towns lies the silence of nearly 80,000 lives, marking this remote, sand-swept outpost as the site of one of the first genocides of the 20th century. Lüderitz clings to the barren, wind-scoured rocks of the southern coast, completely isolated by the Namib's forbidden diamond desert. Here, colonial planners did not erect temporary outposts. They built for absolute permanence. The German Empire intended to stay. Step inside the Gurkha house built in 1909 on the slopes of Diamond Hill, or look up at the neo-Gothic spire of the Felsenkirche piercing the coastal fog. Every ceramic tile, every pane of stained glass, and every heavy beam of Baltic timber had to be transported thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean, unloaded at this hostile harbor, and hauled across the sand by structured labor gangs. This was a massive, obsessive logistical campaign to anchor foreign sovereignty in a territory that naturally rejected it. The town's layout, a rigid grid of Prussian order, was carved directly into the ancient, jagged granite. Though the empire collapsed decades ago, this architecture endures. By transforming their administrative grip into heavy stone, the colonizers ensured their presence would outlast their rule. The built environment remains on this desolate coast, a physical body hosting a ghost that refuses to leave the desert. Listen closely, and the haunting of this desert coast shifts from silent stone to active sound. In the quiet cafes of Swakopmund, or the sun-baked streets bordering the dunes, the ghost becomes audible. This is the domain of Kücheldeutsch, literally kitchen German. It arose within colonial households where indigenous Kwekwegoab-speaking servants negotiated daily survival with German settlers. Today, it persists as a living hybrid dialect. Its structure is a grammatical compromise where speakers move easily between languages in a single breath. German verbs are stripped of their complex endings, colliding with the sharp click consonants of Kwekwegoab and the dry vowels of Afrikaans. A local conversation might start with a classic German greeting, add a Kwekwegoab noun, and close with an Afrikaans particle like ja or nay. This is no academic relic. It is an active community practice. Amidst the intense African heat, these blended voices hang in the air, proof that the imperial project did not just reshape the earth but permanently altered the human voice. Walk down these sun-baked avenues, and the cognitive dissonance of this desert outpost sharpens. Under the blinding glare of the Namibian sky, street signs still bear the name of Chancellor Bismarck, while children at the Deutsche Schule Swakopmund study in the language of the old empire. Every October, the heavy scent of bratwurst and the clink of beer steins drift across the red dunes during Oktoberfest, a cherished heritage festival for some, but for Nama and Herero descendants, a jarring display of historical amnesia. This cultural persistence is no longer a mere eccentricity. It is an active moral battleground. In Windhoek's corridors of power, the dispute has shifted from stone to statecraft. Germany's negotiated 1.1 billion euros funding package is pointedly designated as a gesture of reconciliation, deliberately avoiding the legal term reparations. Descendants like David Kaiko reject the deal as a hollow insult, yet legal paths remain blocked by rulings affirming Germany's sovereign immunity. The colonial ledger remains open, its moral debts unresolved, cast across the sand like a long, dark shadow. The desert heat never truly warms these cold, Baltic facades. In the silence of Swakopmund, we are left chasing a phantom, not of a lost Europe, but of an unreckoned crime. The sand continues to shift, but some ghosts refuse to be buried. Share your thoughts below.